Chelsea Football Club is unrecognisable from the institution that it was in 2022. What was one of the world's most successful football teams has been dismantled and rebuilt without coherence, without expertise, or without respect to the foundations that made it once so formidable. From the outset, this ownership have insisted that their vision, their grand master plan, a long-term vision built on youth, potential, and data-driven recruitment is going to lead to success both on and off the pitch. Despite Roman Abramovich remaining immensely popular at Stamford Bridge, their approach to our former owner has been one of conspicuous disdain. It's comparable to the way that Brian Clough spoke about Don Revie when he took over from him at Leeds United. They constantly spoke about how poorly the club was run by their predecessors and also told us how they were going to improve everything moving forward. But at least Brian Clough had a history of success in the game, a foothold, somebody who is significant in football. Nobody at all in the Chelsea hierarchy has achieved anything ever in football. 4 years later, we have failed to compete seriously on the pitch domestically or on the pitch in Europe. 4 years later, and we have failed to compete at all seriously in the Premier League or at all seriously in the Champions League. And the 8-2 aggregate defeat by Paris Saint-Germain shows that it is further away than ever. Then, the brain boxes behind this operation, of course, they will be pulling the strings and doing wonderful things for us off the pitch. Off the pitch, we have just reported record losses for an English football club. They have transformed a club that won 21 trophies in the previous 20 years into the 2006 to 2020 Arsenal side. A side where the sole priority, the only aspiration, felt like getting into the Champions League. There is no glory in that. And yet, Arsenal then and Chelsea now seem to see that as success. Fifth is not a successful season, but I feel like they think it is. Under the direction of sporting directors Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart, the club's recruitment strategy has been reduced to one single, simple objective: buy young and hope in a few years they can be sold for profit. Players are recruited without consideration for what the squad needs or what the manager wants. The result is a squad that is unbalanced, ill-disciplined, and alarmingly inexperienced at the highest level. What we have instead is a collection of expensive prospects, assembled with the logic of a hedge fund portfolio rather than a football team. Anyone at all, anyone with even a cursory understanding of football could see in the summer exactly what Chelsea needed. It was so clear that we were crying out for a goalkeeper. We were in dire, desperate need of experienced centre-halves, and we needed a defensive midfielder who was capable of playing more than 10 games a season. Now, I love Romeo Lavia, but we needed to buy cover. Anybody with any understanding of football will tell you that that's a fact. Now, the need to sign a centre-back only intensified when arguably the best centre-half at the club, Levi Colwill, got injured just before the season started. So what did we do? What did we do when that injury hit? We went out into the transfer market and we signed a left winger. Having already signed a left winger earlier in the window, we also signed a midfielder who couldn't get into the Brighton team. We signed him on loan. How can you possibly sign Alejandro Garnacho for footballing reasons when you have already signed Jamie Gittins? Now, the Jamie Gittins signing is spectacular in itself. Now, look, you can rationalise why Chelsea allowed Noni Madueke to leave. There are many reasons why. You can say it was good or you can say it was bad. Personally, I don't think that I was too animated when we allowed Madueke to leave, but I assumed that the replacement would be better than Madueke. If you sell Madueke and you go and you buy Eze, it makes sense. If you sell Madueke, who was part of Thomas Tuchel's England side, if you sell Madueke and you go and you buy Jamie Gittins who can't even get in to the Borussia Dortmund side, things are obviously not being done for footballing reasons. Having signed Gittins, you then go and sign Garnacho. Because Garnacho represents a good footballer for the squad? No. A player that the manager desperately wants? No. Position where you desperately need reinforcements? No. Garnacho represented a market opportunity. Now, no club has ever been successful following Blueco's model, but those in the boardroom seem to think, despite historical evidence, despite the lack of success so far, that they are right and everyone else is wrong. They tell you, and this is a quote from a director of Chelsea Football Club, that it is fucking obvious. It is fucking obvious that Chelsea are building one of the best teams in the world. Despite performances, despite everything in fact suggesting otherwise, Daniel Finkelstein will tell us that it is fucking obvious that Chelsea are building one of the best teams in the world. Now, these are the people that we're dealing with. These are the people who believe that they know so much more about football, not just than you and me, but than everyone in the history of the game. These are the kind of people that sacked Thomas Tuchel and replaced him with Graham Potter. These are the kind of people that didn't believe that Luis Enrique was good enough to manage Chelsea in 2023. That one's actually amazing, isn't it? That's actually amazing. Luis Enrique is not up to the Chelsea job in 2023. These are the people running our club. I just don't understand the commitment to the model. I would say a handful of the 60 or so players that they have signed have been out-and-out successes at Chelsea, and yet they persist with it. And the data-driven approach, it's utter lunacy. It's complete nonsense. Like, this data-driven approach led us to signing the goalkeeper, Philip Jorgensen. The season before we signed him, he conceded 61 goals in the league. But we signed him because he's good with his feet. He completed a lot of passes. The data was favourable to him. He conceded 61 goals that season. And this strategy of signing young, they will always point to a player like Cole Palmer. For every Cole Palmer, there are 10 David Datro Fofanas. For every Cole Palmer, there are 10 David Washingtons. And now, ironically, even their signings aren't believing in the project. It's looking like Enzo Fernandez is desperate to leave, and he is the public face of this new approach. He is the public face of Blueco Chelsea, and Enzo Fernandez, it seems, has had enough. Similarly, Wesley Fofana was left out of the squad against Paris Saint-Germain because apparently he's been leaking team news to try and sabotage the manager. And yet, despite all of these obvious mistakes, they expect us to believe them when they tell us that Liam Rosenior is the right man to lead Chelsea. He is the right man to take the reins of one of the biggest footballing institutions in the country. He has absolutely no prior experience. He is completely out of his depth, and I'll say it again, he is the least deserving Chelsea manager in the history of our club. Never before has there been a less deserving manager of Chelsea Football Club than Liam Rosenior. He got the job because he is a patsy for the ownership. He is a company man, a stooge for Blueco. He isn't there because of his managerial brilliance. He is there because he will operate within the parameters set by these ridiculous people pulling the strings of our club. Now look, a lot of people got on my case when he was appointed. What you are supposed to do is back your manager. And I wish I could. I really do wish that I could have got behind this appointment. But it was so clear, it was patently obvious to anyone that he was out of his depth. And his David Brent isms, his diary of a CEO, LinkedIn marginal gains, bollocks, makes us a laughingstock. And asking the players to huddle around the ball to pay respects to a football. A football is an inanimate object. You don't need to pay respects to what is ultimately artificial leather. You don't need to pay respects to a football. It's a football, you score goals with it. You don't pay it respects. Handing Garnacho a note when he's going on, when we've conceded 8 goals against Paris Saint-Germain, talking about the difference between Chelsea and Paris Saint-Germain, saying that they were more clinical than we were and that was the only difference. He is a completely talentless manager who, if we still had the standards that we had a decade or so ago, he wouldn't be anywhere near the under-21s job. In his rather short tenure, we have dropped 4 points at home to teams in the bottom 5, and we have lost at home to Newcastle United for the first time in 14 years. More worryingly, we've also quite convincingly lost every big game that we've played under him. We lost to Arsenal 3 times in 13 games. We got absolutely smashed by Paris Saint-Germain twice. And in those 5 games, the opposition have scored 14 goals. And people want to defend him. People want to point to that performance in Naples. This isn't the Napoli of Cavani and Lavezzi and all those boys. This is not that side. This is a Napoli side with Rasmus Højlund up front, who finished 30th out of 36 teams in the Champions League stage. Now, on one level, I do feel a little bit guilty, because whilst I do believe that Liam Rosenior is totally out of his depth, whilst I do believe that he is talentless, and whilst I do believe that he is the most undeserving manager that Chelsea have ever had, I do concede that he is a symptom rather than a cause. Now, Daniel Finkelstein made headlines recently when he said the importance of the role of a manager is overestimated at most football clubs. Now, that notion, in my opinion, is utterly insane. But at Chelsea, it's probably true. Now, the manager at Chelsea might be the face of the club. The office of Chelsea manager might be held in high regard. But at Chelsea, the manager makes literally none of the key decisions. He doesn't sign the players. He doesn't decide who to sell. He doesn't decide who to banish to the bomb squad. Doesn't even pick the starting 11 without prior approval from the medical team. Therefore, it is ludicrous that 4 Chelsea managers have lost their jobs because of decisions made by sporting directors. 4 Chelsea managers have all had to fall on their sword, and not once have these sporting directors been held to account. Manager after manager loses their job because of decisions made by these sporting directors, and never are they held accountable for their failures. They signed Badiashile, they signed Dizazi, they signed Mark Yu, they signed David Datro Fofana, they signed David Washington, they signed Buonanotte, they signed Gittins, they signed Renato Vega. But Maresca, Potter or Tuchel lose their jobs. Now, it's not just Roman Abramovich's legacy that they have disrespected. It's also the so-called legacy supporters. Season ticket prices have risen nearly 20% since 2022. Champions League tickets this season cost £60 compared to £35 when we were last in the competition. Many fans, many legitimate fans, are being forced at short notice to collect tickets in person. Many fans are being forced to collect tickets in person for home and away games, despite there being absolutely no evidence of any wrongdoing. This is all under the guise of stopping ticket touting. But to treat some of your most loyal fans with this disregard is a disgrace. Meanwhile, though, fans who put their tickets on the ticket exchange, those tickets are ending up in the hands of tourists. So it isn't a desperation from Chelsea to stop ticket touting. Let's remember Todd Boehly is on the board of Vivid Seats, which is effectively a ticket touting website. They aren't trying to stop ticket touting. They are trying to control it and profit from it themselves. Todd Boehly being on the board of Vivid Seats, how is that acceptable? The club are also sacrificing the average fan for the corporate pound note. The West Upper, as I knew it, has now been rebranded as West View. Now, the West View sits half empty most of the time because tickets up there cost several £100s, totally out of reach for your average fan. There is also talk of the most affordable section of the ground being reduced. The family enclosure I'm talking about here. They're going to reduce the size of it to make more room for corporate seating. Like, how are working class kids ever going to get into going to football regularly if they are totally priced out from day dot? Now, all of these things have contributed to making the atmosphere at Stamford Bridge the worst in living memory. There is a malaise at Stamford Bridge, on the pitch and in the stands, and it is all being caused by the boardroom. Now, this isn't a wobble in a project that just needs more time to bear fruit. This is an entirely predictable consequence of an ownership convinced by its own genius. It's completely insulated from accountability, and it is determined to reinvent the wheel and fix something that wasn't broken in the first place. When they took over, Chelsea Football Club were champions of Europe. Thomas Tuchel had won the European Cup. He'd also won the Club World Cup and the Super Cup. Since then, this ownership have come in and we've won nothing. They've taken a club built on elite standards, a club built on winning, a club year on year was built on success, a club where mostly there was alignment between the club and the fans and the players and the ownership. And they've replaced it with this vanity project, this billionaire's plaything, all masquerading as innovation. And until the people running Blueco accept that Chelsea Football Club is not some Silicon Valley tech startup, that football isn't a game that relies on disrupting the market, that experience matters, that supporters matter, that you and I matter, that managers matter, nothing's going to change. The tragedy isn't just what they've broken. They have ruined Chelsea Football Club. They are the worst thing to have ever happened to Chelsea Football Club. And yet they still seem to believe in their own bluster, to believe that they're building something extraordinary, and to be convinced that they are right and you and me are wrong. For me, this ridiculously named project has failed on every conceivable level. It's run by incompetent, arrogant morons, and they have eviscerated the country's most successful winning machine this century. Blueco are the worst thing to have ever happened to Chelsea Football Club, and anyone supporting them or aligned with them should hang their heads in shame. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for listening to the points I have to raise. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Cheers.